Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we look at stories, sometimes old stories, that really did more than just entertain. They actively pushed boundaries and challenged how people thought. Today we're doing a deep dive into a really foundational piece, Bhagyawati. It's a Hindi novel, came out way back in 1888. Our mission here is to unpack why this specific book, from so long ago, is still seen as incredibly important, and honestly, what surprisingly modern ideas it was putting forward over a century ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's key to get right away is, okay, it's old, 1888. But the things it talks about, social change, women's rights, they still hit home today, quite strongly, actually. It's really more than just a narrative. Think of it like a historical snapshot, a window into that specific time of change in India.
Okay, so let's pin down the basics for everyone. The novel, Bhagyawati, the author, Shraddha Ram Phillauri, published 1888. And it's in Hindi, written in a style described as, well, simple and pretty moralistic. So the big question for you listening might be, why? Why focus on a Hindi novel from 1888 today? What makes it so significant?
Well, the reason it's so foundational and why you should know about it is it's widely seen as one of India's very first social novels in Hindi. This wasn't just, telling a story for fun. It was built, designed almost, to tackle the big social problems of the day head on. It was literature trying to make a difference.
That's quite a goal for a novel back then. So tell us about the story. The main character is Bhagyawati, an ordinary girl from a Hindu family, right? And her life involves some really tough realities of the time. Child marriage, her husband dying young, becoming a widow. It sounds quite tragic on the surface. Is she just a victim?
But that's exactly where Filori does something interesting. He doesn't just leave her as a victim. The text actually highlights her as being courageous and full of self-respect, which you have to understand, for 1888, for a widow, that was radical. A widow's life was often seen as basically over. So portraying her with agency, that's huge.
Okay, so she has courage. How does that actually play out? What did she do that defies those expectations, especially with her father helping?
Well, first, with her father's support, which itself was pretty unusual, she actually gets an education. That alone was a big step. But then, the really remarkable part, she remarries. She actually chooses to remarry, defying enormous social pressure. The source material calls it a very courageous step at that time, and it absolutely was. It shattered norms. It suggested a different path was possible.
Wow. Yeah, it's hard to overstate how controversial widow remarriage would have been then. So, building on her personal story, the novel then tackles broader themes. Right, where does it go?
Right. It really digs into women's empowerment. It directly argues for widow remarriage, obviously, but also strongly for the importance of female education. And it pushes back against that idea of women just being, passively tolerant or sacrificing all the time. It questions those roles.
And it wasn't just limited to women's issues, was it? It looked at wider social reforms, too.
Exactly. Yeah. Bhagawati also takes a stand against child marriage and against sati, the horrific practice of widow immolation. Plus, it challenged untouchability, the caste discrimination. The argument was clear. Women needed education and self-reliance, like through remarriage, not just for themselves, but for society's progress. Filori explicitly believed and wrote that if the country is to be advanced, women should also get equal rights and opportunities. It was tied to nation building even then.
So, connecting this to the bigger literary picture, this book wasn't just socially important, it had literary significance too. How did it contribute to Hindi literature itself?
Oh, definitely. Before Bhagyawati, a lot of Hindi writing was maybe more poetry or religious texts. This novel helped establish modern Hindi prose as a vehicle for serious contemporary social commentary. It sort of paves the way, you could say, for using the novel form for social purpose in India. It showed literature could be part of the conversation about change.
And the style it used. You mentioned simple, direct, moralistic. Was that effective, even if it's maybe not what we expect today?
It was described as simple, direct, didactic, but effective. Look, the character development might not feel deep by modern standards, okay? But its purpose wasn't subtle complexity. It was about getting a message across clearly and forcefully. For its time and audience, that directness, that didactic quality, was probably its strength. It worked.
Okay, so thinking about it now, let's try and give a balanced view. What are the pros and cons, maybe looking back? Does that didactic style cause issues for us now?
That's fair. On the plus side, The inspiring social message, definitely. The clear advocacy for women's rights, the simple language made it accessible. The effective dialogue drove the points home. These were revolutionary aspects. On the maybe con side, from today's perspective, yes, it can feel slightly more didactic, a bit preachy perhaps, and some might find a lack of depth in the characters compared to modern novels. But, and this is the key thing, even with those perceived weaknesses now, its strengths and its mission were absolutely groundbreaking then. Its directness was the point.
Right, the context, everything. So, bringing it all together, what's the big takeaway for you listening today? Why does this old novel still matter?
Well, maybe don't think of it as your next beach read, perhaps, but think of it as a powerful social document. It's like a document that holds a mirror to society back then. It gives you this incredibly vivid insight into the reformist energy starting to bubble up in India at that time. It shows how change often starts, with challenging the status quo.
And that leads us back to its central, enduring message, doesn't it?
It does. The core idea, still so relevant, is that women are the backbone of society, and because of that, they deserve education, respect, and freedom.
Hmm.
Shraddha Ram Phillauri, he had a remarkably forward-thinking vision. He really turned Hindi literature into a medium for social purpose. He set a precedent.
So Bhagyawati really stands as this powerful example of literature not just reflecting life, but actively trying to shape it. A pioneering work, challenging norms, championing women over 130 years ago. Its calls for education, autonomy, equality. They still echo, reminding us how long these struggles for social change can be.
Yeah, and perhaps this leaves you with something to think about. How do these stories, these narratives from the past, how do they continue to influence our own understanding of progress, of the ongoing fight for equality? It makes you consider, the quiet power literature can have, how even simple-seeming stories can carry enormous historical weight and maybe point the way forward.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Bhagyawati. We hope it offered some fresh perspective on the power hidden in historical literature.